It is the end of an era in college football and the National Football League as we welcome you in here today. Yesterday, we get the news that Nick Saban has retired as the head coach at Alabama. And then this morning, although, Michael, I know that there have been rumblings for a long time, seemingly expected that Bill Belichick and the Patriots would be parting ways, it still does not feel real in my mind. How did you take in the news this morning?
You know, it didn't feel real for me. It was a reflective moment. And, you know, for me, I was with him in two places. So I go back to the day he walked into Berea, Ohio, as the head coach of the Cleveland Browns and started this incredible journey of success to become the greatest coach of all time. And I think about that. And I think about where he is today as opposed to where he was then. And I don't see much difference. I see a guy who's really well experienced, who has great passion for the game, who's never lost his enthusiasm for the moment, for the work. He loves the work, loves the process. And so today is the end of the Patriot chapter, which was ultimately successful. But it's also a new beginning. I think what I gleaned from that press conference is Bill's going to keep coaching. And the Patriots, you know, they mutually agreed upon was the word that seemed to resonate quite a bit. But for me, this is the Patriots about wanting to run their organization, the Kraft family, how they want to run it. And they couldn't do that with an icon in their way. So it's the perfect situation for both. And I think they handled it really well.
Well, they did speak at a press conference earlier today. Let's quickly hear from head coach Bill Belichick, followed by owner of the Patriots, Robert Kraft, both expressing appreciation and gratitude. But as you referenced, maybe still a chance. It seems more likely than not that Bill Belichick will continue as a head coach.
It's with just so many fond memories and thoughts that I think about the Patriots and I'll always be a Patriot. I look forward to coming back here, but at this time, we're gonna move on, and I look forward. I'm excited for the future, but always very, very appreciative of the opportunity here, the support here, and what you've done for me. Thank you.
This is a move that we mutually agreed that is needed at this time. What Bill accomplished with us, in my opinion, will never be replicated. And the fact that it was done in the salary cap and free agency era makes it even more extraordinary. I thank Coach Bill for his hard work and dedication. It'll be difficult to see him in a cutoff hoodie on the sideline, but I will always continue to wish him continued success, except when he's playing our beloved Patriots.
That's a great line. And we will, get into the where we think he might end up here in just a little bit. But before we do, Michael, you obviously know Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft very well. You've been in a lot of tough conversations in rooms, maybe not to this extent with a legend like Bill Belichick on his way out, but can you give us some insight as to what that conversation might have been like between those two, or the many conversations that have been had that led up to this point?
Well, I think the conversations really center on how do they want to run the organization. Adam Schefter wrote this weekend, and I think it really sums it up well. There gets to a point where an owner wants his franchise back. And I think we saw that in Denver when Pat Bowlen fired Dan Reeves, who was a legendary coach. Dan Reeves has over 200 wins if you count playoffs in the NFL, took two different franchises to Super Bowls. But he ran his course there in Denver. And the owner wanted their team back. And I think Robert Kraft, at his age, with his son Jonathan being intimately involved with the team, I think as the tide had turned in terms of losing, it gave them an opportunity to say, maybe we want our team back. Where do we see our team 4 or 5 years from now? Why don't we make that move today? And I think that there was that conflict that went on through the offseason last year, that maybe they were trying to change the culture, change the direction of where it was. So I think this is the end result of that. And those are hard conversations because people have a hard time with status quo. They don't want to change. the San Antonio Spurs deserve a lot of credit. They have been able to endure some losing seasons and the downfall, and they haven't lost faith in Pop. They haven't lost faith in Greg Popovich. So I don't think they lost faith in Bill, but I think this became a question of, do we want Bill to be part of the rebuild, or is maybe we should rebuild it the way we want to do it? And I think ultimately that is. Now, I will say this completely, having been in those meetings, they're not going to replace Bill. Yeah. They're going to collectively replace Bill. And I think that's something that they wanted to do.
So if you look at the resume and all that's been accomplished by this man in New England, Michael, 6 Super Bowl wins, the most for any coach in NFL history, 31 playoff wins, again, most in NFL history, 17 division titles, 9 conference championships. He's tied with Don Shula for the most 10-plus win seasons, 15 games away for Shula's record for most wins in NFL history, which clearly he's still chasing and is going to go be a head coach somewhere else. With the Patriots trying to take that next step, we saw the reports from Jordan Schultz that there would be mutual interest if Belichick eventually did leave, that Mike Vrabel would be an option there. Gerard Mayo has been kind of this assumed head coach in waiting there at some point. Are those the 2 top candidates in your mind for what's next in New England? Although, as you pointed out, it'll be by committee no matter who steps in there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure the Patriots have great respect for Mike Vrabel. I mean, Gerard Mayo has been operating as if he feels like he has this opportunity. But I think it's going to be the collective effort. Mike Vrabel is represented by Neil Cornrich, who also represents Bill Belichick. So I think Mike Vrabel has a great opportunity to look around the landscape. Here's what I will say, Stormy. I've never seen this in the history of the NFL that I've been involved with. This many great coaches in the open market. It's generational. It's a generational moment to hire a coach. Like, Pete Carroll wants to still work. If you want Pete Carroll, you could hire him. Mike Vrabel's in the market. Bill Belichick's in the market. Jim Harbaugh's in the market. I don't know if Nick Saban still is in the market for a pro job, although he has said pro football is easier now than college is based on the NIL. But let's put him off to the side. When do you have an opportunity to hire this kind of caliber of coach? They haven't lost touch of the game. That's nonsense. Look at the players on Twitter that are coming out in complete support of Belichick. Some players he traded, Richard Seymour. Some players he got rid of, Jamie Collins. Nobody ever thinks he's lost sight of the game. So let's put that out of the way. This is a really generational moment, and I think we are looking at this too linear. There has to be some teams that has a coach who they're not sure of, who they probably want to give another year to. But this moment might be the moment you might have to take advantage of. If you're Jacksonville and you've just fired your whole defensive staff and you've had this miserable season, are you thinking, should we call Harbaugh? Should we call Belichick? Should we call Vrabel? Are they better head coaches than what we have? I'm not trying to fire Doug Peterson. I'm not. This is a unique situation. It happened before, believe it or not. It did happen before. It happened in New York. The New York Jets, under the direction of Leon Hess, one of the richest men in the world, started Hess Oil, a wonderful human being. He loved Rich Kotite, felt like he was a son to him. When Kotite got fired by the Eagles after starting 7-2 and then not making the playoffs, Mr. Hess fired Pete Carroll after one season and brought in Rich Kotite because he thought that was a generational moment. Now, there wasn't any evidence that Rich Kotite was a good head coach, and he proved out not to be. But there's no franchise fan base is going to argue with removing their coach to replace him with one of these coaches who could be legendary. A lot of them are. I mean, Jim Harbaugh's got a 71% winning percentage and a history of developing quarterbacks. Shouldn't that interest Shah Khan, especially with Trevor Lawrence being up for a contract? So there's a lot of these opportunities out there that we don't even talk about. We just think, Atlanta could be the best place or this place. I think you have to dig a little deeper than that because I've not seen this many qualified head coaches hit the market.
I think that's really interesting, Michael, especially because you look at there being 7 other head coaching jobs that are already vacant and already open. But if you are a team that's in kind of a questionable potential transition period? Like, how much are you looking into your coach and evaluating them right now, but also questioning, can we land one of those guys, right? Because I think that's another element to it too. Is that going to work out for you if you do let go of your coach?
Right. Now, in the old days, before we had all the rules and regulations around hiring, Belichick and Vrabel probably would have been available for 2 or 3 days, maybe a week, and they would have gotten a job. That's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. There has to be a process that's followed. Minority candidates have to get interviewed. You've got to wait till the face-to-face. So this is going to be a lot of backroom conversations that are going to take place. And the center of the universe is in Cleveland, Ohio right now, because Neil Cormrich is controlling a lot of this. His phone will be working, and Neil is probably the best underground guy you'll ever see in your life. There's no leaks with Neil. Neil doesn't talk to anybody. It took years before you could get Neil's cell phone number. Like, he is, you wonder why he's representing Bill? Because of this. He used to represent Nick Saban at starting out until Jimmy Sexton got him. So this is going to be controlled. And when one guy controls 2 coaches, that kind of makes it a little interesting in terms of who's interested.
He's probably got the same type of cell phone that Nick Saban has, that when he calls you, it's always a blocked number. So nobody actually has that
But Nick,
phone.
I could text Nick right now, but he's not going to answer me.
As you look at this Patriots organization, Michael, what's next for them?
Well, I mean, first of all, let's understand, they've got a lot of people to replace when Bill walks out that door. You know, he was in charge of a lot of things and did a lot of work. He wasn't a general manager that ran the draft that was just looking at highlight tapes and watching a few players and letting everybody just kind of do it and then come in and pick a player. He literally wrote as many reports as any college scout. So Mr. Kraft has to decide, how does he see the vision of his personnel department working? And I'm sure that they've had this already in place, whether they hire Matt Groh, whether they go out and interview a bunch of candidates, whatever they do, they're going to have to go out and interview candidates. And so I think that's going to be the first step they take. They're going to start interviewing candidates from all over to see where they want to go in that direction. And then they got to figure out what direction they want to go with the head coach. Do they want to stay with Mayo? What kind of program do they want to go? And it's going to be interesting to see what Mr. Kraft says, because, he's identified with the Patriot way, correct? Mm-hmm. But we all know the architect of the Patriot way, the man who did the day-to-day work of the Patriot way, was none other than Bill Belichick. And when he leaves, right, he takes the recipes with him. And somebody else is going to have to fill in the blanks. And trust me, I know this from experience. It's hard to fill in the blanks without him running the show. Okay? So it's hard to have the Patriot way or the Brown way when you don't have everybody who understands that, okay? So there's a lot of people he's going to need to hire. He's going to need to rely on some football people to help him. I think obviously Jonathan Kraft's going to have a bigger role in the organization, because I think he sees a vision of the future that he would want. So I think that's the next step. That's what's going to be fascinating about Kraft's press conference today.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. We heard in the first segment from Belichick and Kraft, who both gave statements, but Kraft is going to come back later and actually answer questions. So we didn't have a back and forth with the press and the two of them a little bit earlier. So that will happen later in the day. I'm not sure. I didn't see a time on that, Michael. Did you?
I saw 2:30, but
okay.
Then I saw the press conference here was 1 o'clock. So I'm all messed up on the timing there. But look, Bill doesn't have to answer any questions. There's nothing to answer for Bill. He's already answered. Yep. Kraft and the Patriots, for us as a betting network and a betting nation, we need to figure out where they're going. Yeah. Right? Now I do think there was a time where there was some conversations within the building that Mac wasn't getting coached right, that Mac's a better player. I think those have all kind of dwindled away. Remember, Kraft wanted Bill O'Brien to be the offensive coordinator through Mac. I mean, that was kind of like something that was done. I'm not saying Bill didn't want him. I'm just saying that came from above. So I think now that they're going to have to make that decision with such a high draft pick, who do they trust to make this decision? I mean, this is a substantial decision in your franchise that you have to have people, and so they're going to have to find somebody that can come in and make that tough choice.
Sure, and it's the first time that the Patriots as an organization have had to go through anything like this in a quarter century. So it's going to be new for them to go through the process to find a head coach. And after this past year, especially offensively, you want to make sure that you can find the right fit. 4-13 the season. Kraft has made it clear that he wants to get back to winning games. He's 82 years old. He wants to, the window is closing for him to get another ring. As a team, tied for last in scoring offense this year, along with the Panthers, which is not a good sign considering they were a 2-win team this year. They averaged fewer points per game than the Iowa Hawkeyes, and we talked so much about how brutal that offense was.
Maybe they're going to hire Brian
right?
Ferentz as their offensive coordinator. He was there. Well, he was a tight end coach for a while. You know, I mean, look, here's what I will say. The Patriots are not as bad a team as it appears to the general public. They've got some good pieces, right? They've got pretty good defense. They're going to need whoever steps in there can get this going if they get the quarterback fixed. And we saw that what happened in Houston. Everybody thought Houston had no assets, and they got it going because they picked the right quarterback. They got Stroud, and then all of a sudden they could start making plays. I mean, you and I could sit down and watch all the games, and we could sit there and say if they played better in this game at quarterback, they win 4, 5, 6 more games. I think it's pretty clear. So it's not as bad as it appears. Now, they've got to get it right. They've got to pick the right head coach. They've got to pick the right general manager. And they've got to get everybody on board. The number one thing about the Patriot way, Stormy, is it's always been aligned. Everybody understood. You see Nick Saban's comments about Belichick. I always knew what we were doing. I understood it, right? Everybody was aligned. Everybody knew their job. This year, I don't feel that was the case. And so there are a lot of things were disconnected. And I'm not absolving anyone or blaming anyone. I'm just saying there was no connectivity. And so, therefore, it got lost. Somebody's going to have to bring that connectivity back.
Yep. Well, we should get in the near future some odds for who the next head coach will be. The odds for Belichick right now, the Falcons are the favorite, plus 150, followed by, oddly enough, not the head coach of an NFL team, plus 175, given the comments that we heard from the press conference. You imagine that number will change, that he will go somewhere. Yeah. The Chargers 4-1, Commanders 5-1. But you mentioned Nick Saban there, Michael, and let's make that transition because you had crossover with both Saban and Belichick. So, you even told us in the commercial break that you remember the first day that Coach Saban showed up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can remember the first day Bill told me we're going to hire Nick Saban. He was the head coach of Toledo for 1 year. I mean, Nick, you know, I could still see Nick sitting in the office watching Mike Kroll, the linebacker from Nebraska, because we had a second overall pick in the draft. He got into the job. The first day he got into the job, he started watching college tape of the draft picks. I mean, we had plan B, but he was already on it. And, you know, and you could see the first day at minicamp when we started. We were practicing at Berea High School on their turf field. It was a cold day in March, a lot of cold days in March in Cleveland. And you could tell the minute I can remember standing next to Ozzie Newsome and you watched Nick Saban coach, you said, that guy's going to be a great head coach one day. You knew it. Everybody knew it. Ernie Accorsi knew it. I knew it. Everybody that watched that man coach knew it. And 4 years later, after we had the great season in 94, where we gave up 204 points, the longest run was 24 yards against us. And a lot of it was because of Bill and Nick working together from really different platforms. Then he went on and didn't think he got the Michigan State job. This is a great trivia question. We're sitting in the room. We had just played a game, and we were all watching tape. I always would watch tape in the defensive room after the game, and when watching tape with them, and Nick leaves the office. He comes back. He said, I didn't get the Michigan State job. Franny Ganner got it. Franny Ganner was the offensive coordinator at Penn State. And we were like in disbelief. And then Franny Ganner turned it down. And Nick got it. Then Nick got it. And then we lost Nick to there. But, I mean, just two tremendous coaches and watched their development. Rick Venturi, who we've had on our show, he was in that room that day too. So we've all seen it and we all know how good they are. I'm surprised by Nick. I really am, Stormy. You cover college football as I do. And I know Nick. Bill has no hobbies, right? Belichick has zero. He might go out in his boat and go fishing, but Bill's hobby is football. Nick owns a Mercedes-Benz dealership, has a Porsche dealership, you know, reads the business page as much as anybody. Nick's kind of a more, there's other things Nick enjoys doing. But he loves football too. But this one took me back a little bit because, you know, when he interviewed with Pat McAfee on the set, you know, you didn't think he was going to leave. And this kind of came out of the blue. This came out of the blue, and I don't know why it came out of the blue. But for me, for Alabama not to have a succession plan in place, it kind of caught them by surprise too, right?
Yeah. And I mean, for the longest time in Alabama, there was the assumption that it would be Dabo Swinney, although the tune on that certainly has changed over the last couple of years. Dan Lanning was a big odds-on favorite earlier this morning to be the next head coach at Alabama, with some of the rumors that maybe he was in Tuscaloosa already. That was debunked, and Lanning posted to his social media today that he's coming back to Oregon, so that's out the window. Other potential candidates to step in, names that we've heard: Lane Kiffin, Kalen DeBoer from Washington, Sark at Texas, although Quinn Ewers announced earlier this morning that he's going to be coming back. An interesting situation there with Arch Manning in the wings as well. Mike Norvell, even James Franklin's name, which, can we just stop putting his name in coaching searches? I'm kind of done with that. He can't beat a top 10 team to save his life, story. Michael. I'm just saying. But
yeah, I mean, you the one thing you do is you read through the BS better than anybody. I mean, most people, you're not gullible at all. They're not getting that one past. You'd be a hell of a goaltender. They're not getting that one past you at all.
Thank you.
That's so good.
Ridiculous.
Look, here's what I do know about Alabama. They are prideful of their heritage. Ozzie Newsome will have a huge impact on the next hire because Ozzie Newsome had a huge impact on the last hire, and he got it right.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.